welcome to your February Professional Development Program Talking Circle. We're going to go ahead and get this cleaned.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Okay, now that we've got this clean, and looks like we had a couple more people join us. They're getting their audio on. Awesome. Welcome, welcome. So today we're going to be really taking time to dig into your induction programs. We've asked a few of your fiscal year 18 grantees to share some strategies that they are implementing as it relates to induction. And we hope that to give everyone an opportunity to learn, plan, and grow really strong induction programs. And then we'll open up for discussion to all participants to share and to ask questions of each other. And then we will wrap it up with going over our upcoming events. But before we get started, next slide, please, Sarah. We'd like to welcome your interim PD program officer, Bianca Williams. Hey, Bianca.
Thanks, Olani. Welcome, everyone. My name is Bianca Williams, and I will be stepping in for a little while until we hire someone for the PD program. I know I see a couple familiar faces. I've been around with the ACE program and NYCP and ARP Air. So I am getting more well-versed with the PD program. I know there's a couple of emails pending my answer. I'm still trying to understand and make sure I'm giving you the right information. So please be patient as I learn the PD program. But I am looking forward to learning from you all. So please reach out if you have any questions or concerns. I will be getting back to you as soon as I know the right answer. And if you have any tips or any information, or you just want to say hi, please reach out as well. I look forward to working with you all and getting to know you as well as your programs. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, and so also joining me today is Sarah Ruff. Hey, Sarah.
Hi.
I'm going to be with you folks for the first part, and then Sarah's going to step in, bringing her expertise to induction programs, and then I will wrap us up at the end. I'm just going to, looks like we still have a couple more people joining. Before we get into the sort of heart of our discussion, I want to make sure everybody has their audio on. Great. Okay. Well, let's rock and roll. So for PD grantees, induction is actually a required part of your grant, right? And induction services are provided after graduation, certificate or licensure. It should be provided for 2 years while participants are completing their work-related payback in school in LEA that serve a high proportion of Indian students. And so you folks know that this is actually, induction is a requirement. But really, what is the purpose of an induction program? And there are lots of reasons, really good reasons to do and create a really strong induction program. It really is a comprehensive introduction to teaching or administration with the necessary models and tools to ensure that a new teacher or administrator has the knowledge and support they need to perform their role. And so, and like really supporting them their first 2 years in the classroom or as an administrator. Next slide, please. Thank you, Sarah. And so why do we need induction programs? Well, it's to produce effective teachers and or administrators. There must be professional development program that improves their professional skills for educators at every point in their careers. The 3 most important reasons for an induction program are definitely retention. And we know that, right now it's hard to get teachers into your program, and then we want to make sure we get them into schools and then also to support them so that they stay in school. So all of that investment that we're making into teachers really has time to sort of play out and be fruitful in the actual school setting. Also, induction programs, research shows actually improve academics. So we know the more trained and more confident teachers are, the better or larger impact they have on improving student academics. And then 3, increase cultural capacity of teachers at admin. And that's really where you folks play a unique role in making sure that teachers are prepared as far as it relates to the cultural capacity. Now that can, in a lot of our communities, that means like Native American culture, but we know also in specific areas, giving teachers the tools to adjust to the actual culture of the community or the culture of the school is really important for them to stay on and again, feel successful and make that impact with student learning. These skills happen through collaboration. We are definitely social beings and teachers are very social, and collaboration really helps to make sense of the world around them for teachers. To have someone to sort of be there to answer their questions, to collaborate with them. We're not just sort of throwing them into the classroom and then leaving them to figure things out on their own. Really helps to both connect new teachers with veteran teachers as well. And again, helps to support their development. Next slide, please. Thanks. And so teacher induction and mentoring, what's the impact? Data regarding teacher induction and mentoring shows a significant impact. Studies show that quality induction services lead to teachers reporting higher satisfaction, higher rates of commitment to the profession, and higher rates of retention for new and novice teachers, which again, like I said a couple of slides ago, we invest a lot into getting teachers in the door to be certified, to be trained and licensed, and then making sure that they are in the classroom doing their thing and over the years to really retain them. I remember very early on when I was a principal, we had a teacher induction policy that for 5 years, we would keep a teacher, if we could keep them for 5 years, in the same grade level in order for them to really get the groove around that particular grade level, their curriculum, as well as their instructional strategies that they'd be using. Teachers who have participated in induction and mentoring programs show higher performance in keeping students on task, developing workable lesson plans, and using effective student questioning practices. Next slide, please. Awesome, thank you. So what we'd like to dig into a little bit now is some talking about induction challenges. We heard from you, we've been hearing from you over, I guess, a couple of years about what those what challenges you're facing as it relates to your induction program. Excuse me. Many of these challenges have been centered around the specific areas, maintaining participant engagement. So over those 2 years, how are you staying in contact with your participants? How are you keeping them engaged? I mean, it can become a real challenge when they're balancing home life, becoming a new teacher and lesson plans, as well as also participating in induction program. And then also time and staffing may be related to this challenge as well. Some of our grantees have shared that participants have a hard time attending because it's difficult to get away from their campuses, or that participants have other obligations, like I said, like family, maybe, nowadays with teacher salary, you might actually have to have a whole nother part-time side hustle gig to be able to pay all of your bills. Other challenges included sourcing and utilizing evidence-based strategies as it relates to both instructional strategies as well as induction program strategies, providing meaningful support. And so you could have a mentor, but is that mentor actually providing support that the teacher needs and that is meaningful for their growth? And then ensuring that you are providing relevant professional development to your inductees. It can also be really difficult to plan, source, create, implement, and follow up on relevant, meaningful, and evidence-based development for your inductees. So let's see if we can address some of your concerns. Next slide. So what we've done is I was talking to a few of you and to sort of kick off the discussion. These are going to be our sort of discussion starters. And so what we would like to do with our discussion starters, if you could just go ahead and come off of mute and share any of the challenges that you have faced in either planning and or implementing your induction challenges. Let's see, I don't even. Chris. Let's see. I don't see him on here. Okay, so I mean, you don't have to be actually from any of these universities, but if anybody wants to sort of come off of mute and share any of the challenges you see around induction program.
Always finding the right fit
Mm,
for a mentor. I mean, that's critical, right?
yeah,
That there's an open relationship between the new teacher and the veteran teacher. And that they feel that they can go to them with questions without sort of losing face or losing reputation.
yeah. That's a really good point. I think a lot of times with an induction program, I mean, we're really focused on the participant, right? But it's like you said, finding the right match with the mentor teacher or the expert teacher. And I mean, that can be like, that's equally important to make sure there's a good match. Others, what are the other challenges you folks are facing as it relates to the induction program?
Hi, everyone. So at the University of Idaho, with our iKeep students, something that's been hard for us is to create like induction options that are relevant and meaningful and evidence-based, but also flexible, because we have people, like we serve people from a pretty broad like region and broad array of tribes and communities. So like our teachers don't necessarily stay near us in Idaho. They will go off and get their jobs back home in Nevada or Washington or Montana, kind of the whole like Western region. And there's just, quite a bit of diversity among the school settings that they're going into.
Yeah.
So something we've been working on to help address that is it's like a menu actually. Do I have the ability to share screen? Is that okay?
Yeah, I can go ahead and let's see. Let me give you. I'm going to make you a co-host. There you go. You should be able to share now.
Awesome, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
so it'll take the PowerPoint down for just a minute. Okay, so this is just a PDF here that we've used with our 2018 cohort, and we call it the Induction Cafe just because we found ourselves like, as people are graduating and moving on, like reminding them like there's this list of options, and like they're all really good choices. And like if we line it up kind of like a menu with different sort of sections, like people can look at it and then come back to us and let us know what they need, which might be different from what some of their cohort members need. So just a variety of different options. And we have found some of the most taken advantage of are coming back to the annual like mentorship summits that we hold. It's been really beautiful because we combine cohorts. So like our newest cohort, the 2021, We've had like a summit with them already, and we had about half of our induction cohort come back for that. And you can see in the induction scholars, you know, they take on a little bit of a mentorship role themselves as they
Mm.
share their experiences with the pre-service teachers. And that's just been a really powerful tool, like for their self-reflection, and figuring out even more what they need in their practices. We've also had people come to like our Idaho State Indian Ed conference, and we brought 3 of them to NIEA in Oklahoma City this year.
Nice.
So like having this menu, I think, is kind of what, like when people are like, well, I don't know what I need, I'm just so busy, I can't, you know, I can't get out of this
Yeah.
grind. We just refer back to this and kind of remind them like, okay, like maybe you can't leave to make it to the Mentor Summit or NIEA, but are there some books you need? You know, like we can get you started with some, like, is there curriculum you're working on and you want to send it to us and we'll help you review it. And then something where we see growth, something we want to improve even more is partnerships, intentional partnerships with each of their school sites, which again is tough because there's just so many, and some are not here.
Yeah.
So, you know, that is an issue of staffing and capacity, and can our program staff go out there, or how do we build liaisons to help them find good mentors in their schools? So that's something we're hoping to improve upon. And some of our mentors too that, you know, work with the scholars as pre-service teachers, we're trying to establish a program where we send them, like take a mentor and send them to the induction scholars classroom, just to do some observations, kind of as someone like out of their context, you know, to provide continued observation there. So you know, we're continuing to work on this, and like with every cohort, we had a rougher version of this with our 2016 cohort, and I'm sure we'll have a, you know, a new slightly updated one when it comes time for induction with 2021. But we've just found this helpful to use this
Yeah.
for our scholars. So
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's a great tool and a great strategy. Any questions of Angela regarding her menu? Okay.
yeah.
I saw Chris jump on. Oh, I'm sorry, Angela.
Oh, it just, yeah, we're definitely happy to share it. I can send it to the TA team, and that's fine if you want to share it.
Thank you. Did somebody, was somebody saying something, or was that you, Sarah?
It was me. I said I saw Chris hop on.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Chris Connor. I see you. Thanks for joining. I just saw your message. Sorry I wasn't able to get to you. But right now we're just sharing about any of the challenges that you may have faced as it relates to either planning or implementing your induction program.
The one that we were looking at, and hi everybody, but the one that you sent, maintaining participant engagement, is one of the biggest ones, and in relation to that is also communication. Those two are kind of going hand in hand. With our grant, it's we're dealing with all teachers, and either prospective or new teachers. And I just think that with this generation, email is kind of not the best avenue of communication. You know, so I was just hoping to hear some of the participants' strategies for maintaining the participant engagement and communication. Some of the things that actually did work for us is increasing the level of accountability in communicating with those who are higher than the program coordinator and myself as the instructional coach, looping in the dean and other folks here at the university to make sure that our students and our participants know that there is an accountability piece to our grant. So that has seemed to work. We are pretty early in our induction services, as we had one just graduate out and began teaching at one of the public schools here. So Another thing is making sure that our students are understanding that with my role as their instructional coach, it's not this is what I say, now go do it type of scenario. It's a partnership, and making sure that they understand that they are the teachers and I'm just providing the tools. And they choose the tools that they wish to use and implement into their classroom.
Yeah.
We do a lot of self-reflection emphasis to make sure that they are self-reflecting and really taking into account the information that they received during professional development sessions. And then making sure that they approach teaching with an asset approach instead of a deficit approach. And one of our professional development sessions was on asset versus deficit approaches to teaching. And one of the underlying themes that came out of that professional development is our participants really need to take a step back regarding asset and deficit in their approach to themselves first. And then that can translate into the classroom. Also with there's a strong emphasis in the grant of being culturally responsive. So a lot of our professional development has been on being culturally responsive in the classroom and what that looks like. And I'm happy to take our students here in the next couple of weeks through Gym Nights and Impact Cycle. And that's where they identify a goal that they want to reach, a goal that's very personal to them. And then they basically get a current view of reality on, what the circumstances are in the classroom, and then identifying that goal. And once they identify that goal, that's where I step in, provide the teaching strategies, modeling, team teaching, and those things. And it's just a continuous cycle. We refine the goal, refine the strategies. And once the goal is met, we go back to the we identify something else. And so that just aids in their professional growth as they continue and hopefully survive those first few years in the classroom. So, but back to the challenges, the teachers are just so inundated with busyness, and that comes with the job. Keeping them engaged in the requirements for the grant has been a challenge. So
awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. And Allison, I see your comment in the chat. Can you want to elaborate? Because I think we've been talking a lot about teachers, but you're bringing up around administrators.
Yes, the program is specifically for growing Native American administrators. And the feedback we have is they feel alone. We had 6 graduates last May. 4 of them instantly went into positions as principals or actually at the county department of education as the new Native American curriculum coordinator for that county. So they went into those positions and they're like, I'm the only Native American administrator in my district. I'm the only new administrator in my district. Everybody's been an administrator for 5 or 6 years. Or here's another one. All the administrators in my district are men. And they don't, there's a different thing going on and they feel alone. So what because we do feedback and surveys. And so we sent them, feedback and surveys, and Steve, who helps me administer this grant, he's on text message, because I'm not a texter, but Steve the texter, because I think it was Chris that said people don't like to email. And so he's on texting. I'm an emailer. We do chats too, like Facebook chats and things like that with some of them. But our feedback from them was they felt so alone. So we okay, we need to have regular post-graduation kind of professional development meetings, talking circles, just like this. And so we have engaged champion mentors, is what we call them, Native American administrators who are mentoring our graduates. And we're providing them with extra hours to do these panel discussions. And these are things that our administrators have said that they need extra help on, that the schools did not prepare them for, that the Ed Leadership Program doesn't prepare them for the complexities of being a superintendent principal of a rural school and having to do all their own budgeting because they don't
Right.
have a business officer, because it's them and their secretary, and they run a small school that's, you
Right.
know, maybe 60 or 70 kids, but they still have to do everything themselves. So
Yeah.
they're like, I am blown away by this. How do I do that? Well, by bringing together our cohort, they all are going to be experiencing this, but some of them just won't vocalize that.
Yeah.
And by pairing them with our champion mentors, as well as other people that we have brought in from different school districts who aren't Native American administrators, but had years and years of experience serving schools with a high percentage of Native American children. And we bring them in and we're like, okay, today's topic is, what the hell is a budget calendar and how do I create a budget?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, where does the money come from? And a lot of them don't understand where the mill levies come to pay this revenue, and it goes here to this fund, and you can't spend the money that's in capital outlay on teacher salaries, because they're going into salary negotiations right now,
Right,
union
right.
contract negotiations. And they're like, how do I go in there when I have no idea how much money I can negotiate for contracts?
Right.
And so, you know, that's what we're trying to do, is trying to let them know that they're not alone, which is a really big complaint. I am so alone.
Yeah.
And then trying to meet them where they're at on their communication. They text, we'll text. They want to chat, we'll chat. We'll be on the phone, we'll however they want to.
Yeah.
Mainly just being as flexible as we can be,
Mhm.
because everybody's going to need a different level of support. I had one cohort member contact me and she's like, do you have time? I said, yes. And it turned into a 2-hour cry session
Wow.
of feeling overwhelmed in her position as an administrator. And she's like, I couldn't believe that the amount of mess that she walked into,
Yeah.
and that there was little structure. Like she was like, I don't even know how to schedule my staff evaluations. How do I do this? So we've looked at the Loose Leaf for School Leadership and Administration Handbook to pull
Uh-huh.
for her by Richard Corton. We've looked at several other things. I've keep referring back to my little anthology of information. There's Voices of Resistance and Renewal, Indigenous Leadership and Education that I refer back to get some good tips on what should you do when this happens.
Right.
So I've been sharing books with them. I'm sharing articles with them. And we partnered with local area organizations and said, hey, would you be able to do a kind of training, a workshop on this or that topic? And I shared 2 of them in the chat with you, one on trauma-informed instruction and the other one on tribal sovereignty and educational sovereignty.
Mhm.
And we've just asked our community partners and said, hey, these are what the surveys say coming back from our graduates.
Yeah.
Can you address these? And they're
Mhm.
like, yeah, we can do that. I said, great, because I don't have the capacity to create a whole new
Right.
workshop or professional development. And one of them actually was done by one of our graduates, the one for trauma-informed healing. And so she, having been through our program and knowing what we can and can't do with our money, she's
Yeah.
like, well, I can do some things with my program, money from my county. And so she did it and served all of our cohort, as well
Right.
as the people who were educational leadership candidates who weren't in our cohort, but who were in our university. So all I can say is you've got to reach out to them,
Yeah.
repeated surveys, meet them where they're at, and then work with your community partners to fill in those holes where you possibly can't fill in them yourselves because of capacity.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Allison. I think, again, a lot of times when we talk about induction, we're so focused on the teachers, but also considering the administrators. I know when I first became an administrator, like I understand that feeling of alone. I
Mhm.
remember one day walking across the campus and going, oh my God, I'm responsible for all of this. It sort of like hits you. And like, who do you get to talk to about the frustrations of that? It's not like you can talk to your teachers because of, whatever, you're the leader.
Right, Olani, you really nailed that, particularly at this one school site. She was a teacher there, taught math, became the administrator, and she felt she lost all of her friends.
Yeah.
All of her teacher colleagues now saw her as the boss, and their relationships dynamic completely changed. And she
Yeah.
was not prepared for that.
Yeah. That's something they don't tell you in training, right? I mean, but that's the reality of the work. Yeah. I can relate. Awesome. So I guess I'm going to turn this over to Sarah now, right, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody for sharing those challenges and even some of the best practices that you have found. We are going to switch over to talk about those research-based induction best practices, and some of these things that we have listed on here are the things that you are already trying and doing within your programs. So as we've said before, there's been significant research surrounding induction programs, their benefits, their best practices, and most researchers agree that these 5 that we have on the screen are key to a successful program. We have pulled these from the Teacher Induction Program Standards, a guiding framework for teacher induction leaders. And Casey's going to drop that into the chat for you so that you have that paper and information just as a resource as you're moving forward. But let's talk through each of these 5 best practices. So the first one is clear roles and responsibilities, and how leaders and decision makers have a clear vision and goal for the induction program. That the goals have been communicated to the stakeholders, and that clear roles and responsibilities are formed between the leaders, the stakeholders, and the inductees. And Chris, I heard you saying this, you were saying like, I want them to know that I'm here as a support for them, not as someone who's going to say like, hey, this is wrong, or this is a gotcha, but actually a partner in this work. So ensuring that those clear roles and responsibilities are there from the beginning will help those inductees be able to transition into those understanding of their new roles. Especially if, you have people who have worked with them on the other side, where they're your teachers and your professors, and now you're moving into being supporters. So the second one is leadership and organizational structure, which again talks about support from the administration, the district, and even the state, where induction programs should engage administrators, mentors, instructional coaches, and the induction participant in order to showcase that organizational structure and have a clear plan for what the induction is going to look like. Moving into mentoring, we know that's a huge piece. Many of you have stated that when you were talking about your challenges, making sure that we have the right fit for mentors, making sure that teachers feel safe going to their mentors, or administrators feel safe going to their mentors, making sure they feel heard is really important for those inductees to be able to develop their instructional skills, for them to be able to reflect, and for them to be able to accept feedback in their new role. Then we have orientation, which is a process to provide a review of the basic school procedures and policies, such as how to order supplies, maybe behavior expectations in and out of the classroom, how to organize the classroom, where to find instructional resources. Those kinds of things are done in the orientation from the school and on the school site. But you can also have an orientation on your side that has to do with things like Allison was saying, of like, how do I go ahead and work on my budget planning when I didn't even know that this fund existed, right? So adding those types of things to your orientation are also important. And then the last one is ongoing feedback and performance assessment. So this is going to look different for everyone. Your ongoing feedback may be may look like the mentor going and giving feedback in the classroom, but it also may just be regular and consistent communication from your program. I heard several of you say, both Angela and Chris were talking about communicating with your inductees. And one of the things that I heard, I think Chris said, was, this generation is not checking their email, right? And I think the other part to that is, we all know teachers, and Chris, you said this too, are inundated with a million emails a day, right? Like, I remember I just left the school site about 3 months ago, and I would wake up in the morning and to at least 100 emails, and a whole entire hour of my day at the very beginning of the day was spent with that. But at the end of the day, I still had 100 emails. They just kept coming in, and we know that both teachers and administrators don't have time for that, because they need to be in the moment working with students and working with teachers and working with the community. So adding to their email is probably not a good idea. So what are some ways that we can start working towards communicating and giving that ongoing feedback or ongoing communication? One idea that I thought of while you guys were talking was really utilizing social media. It is free to get an Instagram account. It doesn't cost anything. And it is very easy to communicate that way. It's easy to make a reel of just you talking, and then you can send that out and have anybody who's in your program look at it. Same thing with TikTok. I am not as versed in TikTok as I am in Instagram, but it is an opportunity there. The other thing I was thinking is that there are many different communication apps out there, such as Remind, where you can send text messages on the Remind app, and it can only go to a specific group of people. So it is safe and secure, and you can say like, hey, just wanted to let you know we are having this opportunity coming up next Wednesday at X time, or here's a link to an amazing development video that I saw. I wanted to just share that with you. So that's an opportunity as well. And I know one of those apps is called Remind, but I'm sure that there are several others to look up. So all of those things are important. Let's talk about how we plan for those things. So Lori Moore and Benjamin Grant Swan did some research, some pretty in-depth research on beginning teacher induction programs. And I think that this work is also very congruent with beginning administrator induction programs as well. I think they work really well together. And so for the majority of the time that we have left, we're going to be digging into these high intensity and low intensity activities to start planning for and getting some research-based and evidence-based relevant activities for your inductees to be working on. So in this study, Lori found that teacher induction activities could be divided into two groups, the high intensity activities and the low intensity activities. And the high intensity activities really worked towards increasing teacher effectiveness, and the low intensity activities worked towards increasing teacher retention. There's some of these that I think really go hand in hand, such as, matching novice and veteran teachers, I think would be the same as mentoring, right? Like those two practices go together, but you can have mentoring, sure, but if you're mentoring two new teachers together, then it's not going to be as effective as if you have a novice teacher and a veteran teacher working together. So you can look these over and see we're going to talk about them in some depth. But the other thing that I wanted to note, that it's important to note that some of the activities included in this research may not be feasible for your program, as you might not have the opportunity to or the authority to provide some of these things. One of the ones that I'm thinking of in particular is adjusting working conditions, right? I would love to adjust working conditions for teachers and administrators across the planet, but that's not something that I can do. But it is something that I could partner with the district or with the state or with the LEA to start working on to focus on if I'm showing that some of these things need to change. So let's look first at the low intensity activity resources. So when we're looking at those low intensity activities, what our team saw was that they are mostly working on partnerships and collaboration, right? So in that teacher and orientation space, or in that administrator orientation space that we know that the school districts are going to hold, how can we as a program partner with them to ensure that we are showing collaboration and showing visibility for our teachers? Well, one way is if I am close and I'm not a program like iKeep, because this would be a little bit more difficult for Angela, but I could show up and have a booth at orientation with program information and maybe talk to people there about mentoring. I could also facilitate one of those onboarding sessions, right? I could be the person who gives the session about mentoring. I could be the person who does a quick overview of budgeting and what are all these different types of budgets. So I can partner with the district or the LEA or the state to provide some of those services. Another one would be to sit in on the matching. You have known your students for several years now since they've been in your program. You know their ins and outs a little bit better than the principal or the district that now has your employed your student, your new inductee. So having a conversation and a collaborative mentor matching time may be a great opportunity to ensure that we do have those really great partnerships that I know that I think DeLacy was saying earlier, like that's really important to make sure that we're having everybody match up and so that everyone feels like they are able to bring their full selves to the partnership. And then the last one would just be to promote collaboration. Host a lunch and learn at the school, host a lunch and learn on Zoom and just say like, hey, show up if you can. I'd love to be able to give you a little bit of information here. And I would also say that meeting with your school leaders and the school board regularly to see if there's anything that they see can benefit in the partnership. If they see like, hey, the inductees that you have are doing really awesome, but we would love for them to have, you know, this layer of information. You can start working that into your program ahead of time instead of having to do it on the back end. Does anyone have any questions or any thoughts around any of these low intensity activities that we have here?
Yeah, Sarah, what do you guys, with the mentor matching, what do you constitute as a veteran teacher?
I think that depends, right, Chris? So I just left a position in Wolf Point schools up here on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in northeastern Montana. And we had a significant problem with teacher turnover. And as I think a lot of places do, but we also have a very wide range of teachers. So we have our extremely veteran teachers who have been teaching for 25, 30, sometimes even 40 and 45 years. And then we have our new teachers who are, you know, in their first through fifth year of teaching. Well, if all of our new teachers come in and have those veteran teachers as mentors, we know what happens. Those veteran teachers get bogged down. They're leaving our profession and they're saying like, this is too much. All of the new curriculum and new things to do. Plus I'm now mentoring 2 and 3 teachers gets really difficult for them. So I think it kind of depends. I would like to say that, and I know that the research says someone who has 5 years or more of experience, but I think it really depends on what's going on in your community and what's happening in the schools that you're working with. I also think that when we're talking about novice teachers and veteran teachers, we're not just talking about skill set, but we could also be talking about cultural knowledge as well. And maybe we split those things up because we may have teachers who are relatively new or administrators who are relatively new to the profession. However, they are also community members who have lived in this community and worked in this community for a very long time. And they can provide some cultural insight that may be different than some of the veteran teachers who maybe have moved around a lot or have different experience in different communities. So I think looking at mentor matching a couple of different ways is important. But as far as research goes, Chris, it does say 5 or more years of experience, but I do know that that's not always feasible for everyone. Great question. Any other questions about low intensity activities or anyone that wants to add to this? All right, let's move on to those high intensity activity resources. So if you check the chat, we are going to be talking about a lot of different resources that we'll be able to hand out to you today. And Casey is going to stick those in there. Everything that we have on these next 2 slides has a link to them so that you'll be able to take those away today and be able to use them. So those high intensity activity recommendations support increased teacher effectiveness, and therefore they support increased student academic success. Let's start with some of those mini development courses. they can support novice teacher growth with just-in-time development. There are a lot of times that teachers go like, oh, I have to, I have this one student who, despite everything that I'm trying, just will not sit on the carpet, right? It is difficult to kind of get somebody over into their room for that one student to sit all day to help them. But how can we provide some just-in-time resources to those teachers? I think another problem that we have with mentoring is that it's hard to find program staff with expertise in multiple subjects or multiple grade levels to provide induction development. That can be really, really difficult since there's not very many of us working in these programs. And one way to mitigate that dilemma is to utilize online repositories of professional development. Websites such as the Teaching Channel, such as Inspire, Common Sense Education, and KET Education. All of those provide professional development courses at no charge to teachers. They are repositories with a vast variety of topics. You can search in the search bar for anything you want. So if you've got, like I have a concern about how to provide, my principal has asked me to do a morning meeting. I don't know what that is. You can search morning meeting on any of these and watch a veteran teacher walk through a lesson with subtitles at the bottom showing those teacher moves of like, this is why they're doing this. So it's really like having a coach in your ear while you're watching a model teaching lesson. This is also good because we know that in rural areas, it's difficult to network in person. And so having those opportunities, if you've only got 10 teachers at your small school, it's difficult to take one teacher away to go and watch another teacher or to mentor another teacher there. So these are some great things that are here. Yes, Allison, they do have things for administrators. I will say that as I was, as a former leader of principals, I would send them to these channels quite frequently because I also wasn't able to go and model for administrators all the time. So there are some things for administrators as well. Probably more around evaluations and things like that, but that's really important. So what about networking for new teachers or new administrators as well? There are multiple opportunities for teachers to network in online communities. There are several that you can pay into. But the ones that we have here are free networking sites for teachers. So if you have teachers who are, like Allison was saying, or administrators who are saying like, I'm the only one, it is only me and I do not have anybody to talk to about this. These 3 places in particular are very great places to say like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I do know also that there are Facebook forums for new teachers and new administrators. Administrators in particular, there's one called Principals. And that is a Facebook group that is free to all administrators. And that is a really great resource. I'm on there quite frequently, posting questions. And I'm also on there quite frequently just saying like, hey, this is something that worked for me. They have a huge online repository. That's one that I did not put on here, but Principals, I'll drop it in the chat. And it's on Facebook. That is a great network. They frequently have ideas of like, hey, do you need school culture ideas? Here's what we're doing for February. Or you have to onboard an assistant principal. Here's my checklist for how I do that. So they have tons of information on there. But let's talk about the 3 that are on the screen. So the New Teacher Network is hosted by Columbia University. You do have to sign up for it, but it is a free opportunity. They frequently provide online networking events, development webinars, and access to lots of resources for free. The Indigenous Educators Network was created by Indigenous teachers from across North America to support Indigenous teachers working with Indigenous students specifically. And then we have the Native Alliance, which is hosted by Teach for America. Teach for America is an AmeriCorps program, and this Native Alliance supports Indigenous teachers working with Indigenous youth across the United States as well. So these are just a few, but like I said, you can find tons just doing a quick search on the internet or even on Facebook and social media. They are there. And I know that like Principles has a TikTok version as well. Thanks to Lacey. They are all over both Facebook and Instagram. So let's look at another set of high intensity activity resources. So some of these include mentoring and then observation and advice. When we think about ensuring that mentoring programs are successful, you can start by providing a mentoring checklist or a handbook to both mentors and mentees. In the chat, Casey is going to go ahead and drop a link to a mentoring handbook and a mentoring checklist that we found, that we sourced, that is a great resource for you if you want to look at creating a mentoring checklist or a mentoring handbook. But they can really help you to focus on getting those ideas off the ground and making sure that you have that clear communication of your goals and what you want in your mentoring program. The other thing that we have here is, again, making conscious pairings. We've talked about that several times, and then providing opportunities for observations both in groups and individually. And I saw in the chat, Lalani, about the New Teacher Network. Yes, it is open to all new teachers. It is through Columbia University and the Teachers College, but it is open to any new teacher across the country. That's a great question. So then if we look at observation and advice, we just need to make sure that we're allowing time and space for both peer and mentor observations. Having peers be able to go in and say like, hey, I see you doing this, or giving that great like glow feedback and not necessarily a grow feedback is also important. And then providing small but impactful coaching advice, making sure you're giving those bite-sized nuggets that are really important, and utilizing an evaluation tool as an anchor to support growth. This is one of those things that as we were researching kept coming up several times. Many times new teachers or new administrators have not had the opportunity to review their evaluation tool and how they're going to be evaluated at the end of the year. So utilizing that evaluation tool to have your coaching conversations is a great way to be able to track the growth of your inductee so that they have a goal that they are trying to get towards. All right, so that was a lot for high intensity activity resources. Before we move on to hear from our best practices again, does anybody have any questions about those high intensity activity resources? Or any thoughts?
There's actually one thing I was hoping to add quickly, in terms of something we've done that kind of combines mentoring with our own sort of mini course. Well, it's a PD really, but we designed this during COVID, something completely online to keep everyone connected. And we did it in the spring of 2021 and 2022. We brought our mentor network in to do, like, over the course of a couple months in spring, an online culturally responsive curriculum development course. And we invited all of our induction scholars and asked them to try to get a few of their colleagues to do the course with them. So it was designed to be done in teams of teachers from the same community, teachers and partners, you know, sometimes including paras, and I don't know if we had any administrators, but just different community education partners. And we actually did have a couple of our students bring people to this course who were not super familiar with our CSRP materials. And they worked together on unit designs, and then we had our virtual meetings and like a virtual presentation at the end. It was super time intensive, so not something we would offer every single year, but we found that was a great way to keep people, keep them going in terms of continuing to refine their practice, even in the midst of COVID, which was obviously really challenging. But I'll share the syllabus to that in the chat here as well, and feel free to take a look at that.
Thanks so much, Angela. Absolutely. So that's another just a nugget that we get from University of Idaho. Is there anyone else that would like to share, whether you are listed here on the screen or just hanging out with us today? Is there anyone else that has any best practices, maybe that we didn't touch on or that you have perfected in your work in this area?
And Sarah, if I could add something, one thing that I've seen, and I just came on February of 2022, but we're working with these students. I think the community aspect of making them a community of scholars or a community of teachers, prospective teachers, has been really beneficial, just because culturally the importance of community is really big. And given the geographic location and the tribal affiliations, all of our students are the same tribal affiliation. So making sure that that community aspect within our group of scholars has been really important and beneficial. Like there, even socially, because there was a group of them that went to the Carrie Underwood concert locally a few days ago. You know, so they're networking within themselves. So when they leave our program, they'll still be a pretty tight knit group. That just, you know, in thinking about Native culture and the importance of community and being together, I thought that however you guys do your community building, that has been a very big thing for us here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that, Chris. It made me think back to the community I built as, you know, as a new teacher, you feel, or a new administrator, you feel so alone and like, oh gosh, like, just like Olani said, like, I'm in charge of this. Like, I am in charge of these 25 humans now, and they're with me all day, or I am now in charge of, in my case, it was 900 students at the principal level. And so like, oh gosh, I have to go, and like their parents are dropping them off for me. And now like I'm in charge. So having that community is really, really important. And I just think back to, you know, my first years of teaching, those are my best friends to this day, right? Because you kind of live through it together and work through the muck and the mire. So great. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. So I'm going to send it back to Olani to take over. Thanks, Olani.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So I guess, again, like Sarah asked if there was any questions or comments, but we just want to sort of make space again. If you have any questions.
I have a question, Alani.
Okay, go for it.
It was actually earlier, and I think it was Chris Connor who mentioned that when it came to engagement and communication, sometimes that can be a challenge. And I think, Chris, you said that instituting some type of accountability structures was necessary. Can you share some of those that seemed most effective?
Awesome.
So within the, and this is very new to me, because we just had one teacher to just graduate, because in our program, we have students at the university who are in different phases of the teacher education program. So we have one student that just phased out and is now in her first year of teaching. And really my biggest thing for accountability was to bring in somebody else that was kind of above me to kind of, you know, really pull in the attention of that student. And when I sent her an email, which was you know, one of the things that I was like, well, she doesn't check her email anyway, so I'm gonna try. But I copied the dean on the email, who is our, you know, our chief program director and principal investigator for our grant program here at the university. And within a day, I got a response. So I guess just incorporating in others that are, you know, at a higher level administratively than what I was. That was my next line of defense. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do after that, if the communication, because we have to show that we've offered induction services. And I was like, you know, Dean, what do I do? I don't, without the communication and setting up times to be able to offer these induction services, I'm kind of, you know, my hands are tied. So, you know, looping her in, excuse me, was the biggest thing for that. And the story isn't over yet. So I bet I'll have some more experiences to share at a later time. But
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Allison.
I wanted to, when you talked about the email, Chris, one thing that popped in my mind, I should mention, if your email address is at all strange, like ours has a hyphen in it, it can go to the spam box, and then you're emailing people and they're not even getting it because their organization spam filter is like, that's a weird email, and just sends it to the spam. And we had several different cohort members at their school districts had that blocker on their thing, and it was going straight to their spam folder. And so when Steve texted them like, hey, what's up? You're not checking your email. They're like, what email? And then they had to go to their district and say, hey, by the way, I'm in this program, and can you not send this to my spam? Because it was the district level. I don't know, it's called a white list, and you get put on a white list. So anyway.
Great. That's a great suggestion, Allison. Sometimes they just don't get it, right? I mean, because of security and safety. Awesome. Any other questions or thoughts regarding engagement or also accountability? All right. Okay, well, if not, let's move on. Sort of reviewing upcoming events. So don't forget that the Office of Indian Education Student Artist Competition is happening again this year. Now you might be like, oh, Lenny, we don't have students in this age level, you know, we're in the PD program. But please, I want to encourage you to share this information with any of your teachers that are in induction programs or maybe student teaching, whatever they're doing. If they're touching a student, share this with them and encourage them to get their students to participate. The theme this year is I Am the Future. And so students can submit their interpretation of that theme via art, writing, and or video. The art category can include a variety of mediums, including painting, drawing, mixed media, photography, and textiles. The writing category should be focused on the theme and be 1 to 2 pages long narrative essay. And then of course the video, it's not not a Cannes video yet or movie yet, but what we do want to do is ask students to create a piece that's no longer than 3 minutes. The winners will be announced at the project directors meeting coming up in June, and the deadline to submit entries is March 15th. So that's coming up really fast. So again, if you could share this information with any of your participants who may be working in the classroom, or even administrators in schools that maybe want to get their entire school involved in this effort, we would really appreciate it. And then the next event, of course, is our project directors meeting. Just a reminder, save the date, June 6th through the 8th. We want to encourage you to attend. This year, normally we were only able to take 3 participants from each organization, but this year we'll be able to open it up. You know, a lot of the content that you folks provide, as well as participating, could be beneficial to any of your inductee participants. And so you may want to think about, involving and engaging your inductee participants in some of the PD meetings and maybe invite them. So as we are sort of wrapping up, we're going to put up the end of the event poll. Let me just grab that. and launch that. If you wouldn't mind taking a couple, maybe 60 seconds. You folks are probably old pros at this end of the event poll. We do utilize this data to make decisions and to improve our practice. And so I really want to encourage you to take the poll. I'm hoping you folks can all see it. Can you see, is it popping up on your screens? Okay, awesome. Just checking. While you're doing that, let's move on to the next slide, and just a reminder of upcoming events. We are going to be having the APR webinar on March 3rd. Your APR due dates are listed there. For fiscal year 21, it is March 31st, and for fiscal year 18, it is April 28th. So you can see that the March one is way in advance, at least a month or maybe more, depending on your grant year. So you want to make sure you're participating in that. Again, I really want to encourage you, if you can, to invite your budget staff to participate in that. If they're not able, you may actually want to encourage them and send them the link to the recording so that they are aware of their of how they need to complete the forms. Again, I think our fiscal year 18 might be old pros at this, but 21, you may want to again engage your fiscal team in the practice, in the training. And then here is our dates for the PD program Talking Circle coming up. Again, just save the dates. We have April 19th, June 21st, and August 23rd. You'll be getting those notices if they, I think they'll be coming out soon, where you can just sort of accept and have that show up on your calendar. As well as our monthly office hours. That will be next week, February 23rd. I'm sure you folks are, again, you're all old pros at the office hours. It's just a really great time to kind of get together, ask your questions, and even hear other people's questions, because sometimes, you guys come up with some really great questions that maybe you might not have thought of, and you get some new information. In order, if you have any, you need any assistance, please reach out to your OIE technical assistance team, either by contacting us at this email, oie@seiservices.com. If you would like to schedule an individual coaching session, you can go ahead and click on that link in Calendly and schedule something. Let's see if I can throw that in the chat. That's always helpful. There we go. So you can go ahead and schedule. And then we just want to again say thank you for participating. Thank you for sharing what you are up to regarding induction. If you need to get in contact with anyone, remember Bianca is your interim program officer. There's her email right there. You're always welcome to contact oie@seiservices.com. When you do contact us, we would appreciate in the subject title of your email to please make sure you put your award number, your PR award number. Many of you have multiple grants, and so that helps us sort of be better prepared for when we respond to your email. Also, you have your, I always love to say this, PDPDCS. That's an acronym, 9.5. But you have that contact information there. And then, of course, on Twitter, we're always sort of not just looking at education, but looking across the landscape of Native American, Alaska Native communities, as well as other Native people within both our states and territories. And so it's a really great place to get information and stay up to date around the larger landscape in Native education. Again, thank you. I'm going to end this poll right here. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, we're ending a little bit early. And so we'll stay on for a bit. If you have any questions, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you, I think, at office hours. Take care. Aloha.
Bye. Thank you.